I've Floridian my whole life, and I'm 21 years old. I was born in 2000, actually, which a lot of people cannot believe that when I say that.
All right, let's cancel this.
Yeah. The best part about being young right now, and it first of all, it gets a lot of people's attention because they're like, who does this guy think he is, right? I'm not always going to be the young guy, If you look, actually, Tony Robbins started when he was 17.
Yep.
Do it now, figure it out later, and just keep figuring out, keep learning, keep growing, and keep winning.
You were awesome, man.
Yeah.
21 years old.
I know. Isn't it crazy? Welcome to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. I am Bryan Level, always here with our amazing co-host, Mr. John Jones. Long time no see.
What's up, man?
What's up, brother?
How are you?
I'm doing amazing.
Got a matching today. We're looking good.
Yeah.
At least I am.
You're definitely looking good.
You've been somewhere. You've been out in the sun a little bit.
I've been out in the sun. I spent a little bit of time on a boat yesterday.
All right.
So we have a special guest. I want to introduce Mr. Brad DeMint. So, Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you hailing from? What do you do? Let's get into it a little bit.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on the show, guys. So I was born and raised in St. Pete, Florida. I love it. I've Floridian my whole life. And I'm 21 years old. I was born in 2000, actually, which a lot of people cannot believe that when I say that.
All right, let's cancel this.
Yeah. Holy moly.
So I was born in 2000. I work with my dad at a title company.
Okay.
So my dad owns a title company, but I love it because it's one of those things that, like, I build relationships for my business, right?
Yep.
And I've been in sales my whole life, so I started out. And
Time out.
That's been
Your
like
whole
5 years.
life.
You've been in
Let's-
sales for
let's-
5 years.
So when we say let's go back to where you started, right? 8 years old, 7. When did you had to start young?
I've been selling since I was born, man.
Okay.
And I'll get
I
into
love
that. And the reason why is because growing up, like, I was always learning business things, right? Like, my dad would be listening to Tony Robbins when I was in the car.
Awesome.
And I would ask my dad, I'm like, well, who's that, right? Zig Ziglar, guys like that. Those have been mentors of mine.
I do the same thing with my kids.
Oh, I know, and it works, and I'll get into that too because a lot of people that are in business and they want to teach their kids these things. That's what happened with me. My dad was been in the real estate industry my whole entire life, and I saw what he did, and at first I didn't know if that's the industry that I wanted to get into, but once I got into sales, I realized that it was just naturally something that worked for me, and I went all in. So I started my podcast in 2019, How to Win with Brad DeMint.
Okay.
And, really all it is taking action, right? I went to an event, a Grant Cardone event, and he was talking about starting a podcast. And I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And I'm the kind of guy that if I say I'm going to do something, I do it.
Sure, yeah.
So 19 years old, I was actually a sales manager at a phone store.
Okay.
Selling cell phones. And I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. So I came up with How to Win with Brad DeMint. And I use this magic tool called Google. Yeah. And I searched, how do you start a podcast?
The Google machine.
And I did that, started the podcast when I was 19. I'm 21 now. I've been doing that for a couple years. And I've met a lot of awesome people doing that. So I love the title business. I love having a podcast. And I love just helping people win.
Yeah, cool. So I'm going to ask a couple follow-ups. So what's the name of the title company?
GreenLeaf Title.
GreenLeaf Title, okay. And so we met Brad at an event in Orlando, the Florida Association of Mortgage Professionals. And like literally it was like, hey, you guys have a podcast? Yeah, I have a podcast. When can we be on each other's podcast? Yep. And here we are.
St. Pete,
right?
Local. Perfect,
right.
Yeah.
And so, dude, that's very cool, man. So you started off doing cellular sales, which, by the way, I think is a really good industry
Good segue, yeah.
To get into any kind of sales. How often does your podcast come out?
I drop podcasts usually weekly or every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I usually will have either do episodes with just me or I'll have a guest on there. So the episodes with just me are short episodes. I actually realized that I didn't like listening to long podcasts, so why would I have a long podcast?
Yeah.
Right? So I started out a podcast, and I know your guys' podcast is like that too, which is another awesome thing. But I started doing just like 5-minute episodes. Right? I had a topic, and a lot of times it would come from a conversation I'd have with somebody of something that they wanted to hear on a podcast and something that would come to me, and I would just go out and start talking about it, make a podcast, and post it.
Yep.
And I talk about this now. It's kind of funny, but I started my podcast talking into my phone. I didn't have all the equipment yet.
Yeah.
I just talked into my phone, voice memos, and posted it.
Yep.
Now I have a lot of equipment, and I actually, it looks like I have a podcast. But
I love it. Perfection is the enemy of done.
Exactly. When people say, they don't have the equipment, they don't know what it takes to start. With me, I literally recorded on my phone for months before I ever even had a microphone.
Wow.
So, the biggest thing is don't be afraid to fail and just take action. So that's how I started the podcast. And I actually started out in selling Cutco kitchen knives.
Okay.
So I did
we
the
go.
phone sales, but I did Cutco kitchen knives, and I worked at a real estate school, and then got into phone sales, and then got into title. So it was always a sales job for me because that's where I was the most comfortable in. It was like, I'm not a hard labor kind of guy. I tried to do that. Wasn't my thing. I'm good at connecting with people, good at building relationships, good at talking, right? And for me, it wasn't good for me to be out there doing things I'm not good at. And I always talk about that. Do what you're good at.
Yep.
Everyone has gifts. Figure out what they are, and it might take a while to figure it out. Figure out what they are, but take action and keep going for it.
Dude, I love watching you win at the ripe age of 21. I'm trying to think of 21 years old for me.
Still in college.
No, I wasn't. I was at 21, and I was still working at Publix Supermarket. I was in a manager and training program, and I left there, got into retail. 2 years later, I was a district sales manager there. So, dude, you're doing really well. Nice to see you winning like that. Where can we find your podcast at?
So I'm on all platforms, anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just search Brad DeMint, How to Win with Brad DeMint, and that's where you find it. So,
all right, cool.
You got to make it easy to find yourself. That's one thing that I would say is a lot of people, if they're not posting on social media, they're not being able to be seen, right? And I think we're going to go into building your brand and stuff like that. Really easy. So you just search my name and I'll come up.
Yeah, cool. So here's a pro tip about podcasts. If you listen to it or watch it at 1.5 times speed, you can actually still understand what people are talking about, and you can turn a 30-minute podcast into a 20-minute podcast, pretty quickly. So you can bust through a whole lot more.
I do that on Audible too. I've done that a few times. Because then you can just listen to it back. It takes the same amount of time.
So growing up in St. Pete, you've got a lot of friends. I'm guessing that they're still in college. A
lot of my friends are still in college.
So FOMO, you've been working now, right, 2-3 years out of high school, right? Probably a little jealousy back as how successful you are, and then they look at themselves, what they're doing in college.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's people that hate on me, and if people aren't hating on you, you're not doing something right.
Sure.
So yeah, a lot of people hate on me, but I actually inspired a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because they're still in college, they're doing these things, and they see what I'm doing. They've seen me out with a lot of different people at these events, meeting a lot of my mentors, and they're like, how do I do that? And I see the people that I really let close to me, they're figuring out what can they do to go chase their dreams, But yeah, if you don't have haters, you're not doing something right. So a lot of people
I
are
love it
hating
right
on
now
me.
because the last 4 or 5 years for me personally, I start to, we've talked about this. What's the value of a 4-year degree?
Yes.
And unless you're specifically going to become a doctor, an attorney, or a certain, that requires that, if you know what you want to do, why skip that 4-year period? Just get after it. And that's
and I
awesome.
think I wouldn't want to discount a 4-year degree. By the way, I don't have one, and I'm doing pretty good for myself. But I think at his age, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't really know what that path looked like. I knew I wanted to be in some sort of leadership. I knew I wanted to serve other people, even at that age. And to your point, part of that is I learned that from watching my father, right? And so, I watched my dad do that, and I wanted to emulate my dad. Still have a huge amount of respect for my dad. And so I knew that was kind of what I wanted to do. I just hadn't figured out yet how to do it or what education and training I needed to be able to do it. Yep. But I knew that in my heart of hearts, I knew I wanted to serve other people and I wanted to lead. And I pursued that. Right. I think for you, you understood that. It sounds like you understood that a little bit earlier and you just started getting after it. So, congratulations to you. But I think, there's a lot of careers out there, John, to your point, that you can make a lot of money and you don't necessarily have to have a degree for it,
And real estate's one of them.
And I think, let's be honest, there's a lot of people who go to college for one thing and they finish having done something totally different. So a lot of times it's like that. You're in that weird stage of life. You haven't really figured out what you want to do yet, when you're an adult. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people...
Well, you're 31 now, so you've got plenty of time.
Yeah, I got plenty.
Yeah, you're only 10 years older than me. But, the funny thing about that is a lot of people, you're right, they don't know what they want to do. And with me, I learned a lot through personal development, right? Mm-hmm. And I started when I was 17. I went to a Tony Robbins event, walked on fire. It was awesome.
Same here, bro.
Did you
I
really?
love it.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
So I went and walked on fire at a Tony Robbins event. And I remember going back to high school at the time, and people kind of thought it was weird. They're like, "You walked on fire. What are you, in some cold or something?" Right? But I was so fired up because I
1 in the
knew.
morning, by the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. But I knew, all my friends were going to college. A lot of people were like, "Man, you should definitely go to college." And I knew what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to speak in front of a bunch of people. I know that I wanted to, go out there and pursue this business in real estate. And it was so fun for me because I lost a lot of friends because they were like, "Oh yeah, Brad's not going to do anything in life." And then a lot of people kind of came back later like, "Oh, actually he did what he said he was going to do." And I'm still every single day learning and growing, right?
You got to.
Like, I think obviously I've had some success, but I haven't even hit where I want to be yet. And I think that even the most successful people in the world, they're going to tell you that.
Let me guess, you want to own a sports team someday.
That actually is one of the things that I want to do.
It.
And it's something that I love sports. I'm passionate about it, and I love real estate. My goal is to really expand the title company, always be a title guy, but invest my money in real estate and own multifamily properties that are going to cash flow. I don't talk about it as much right now just because I'm still learning that, and I'm still working on buying this multifamily, and I'm really taking in as much knowledge as I can. But my goal eventually, I love sports so much that I do want to own a sports team. Not sure what sport yet. I'm a big baseball fan. But I also love
Kevin
football,
Cash,
basketball.
does he have to stay, go?
If he
I say fire him.
if he does what he did in the World Series and not walk the guy when we could have had a double play opportunity, right? But yeah, I'm a big sports fan, so that's actually one of the things I always talk about, having fun too, right? You got to reward yourself when you're doing things. And I love going to sports games. I have Bucs season tickets. Tom Brady's my favorite player. I think you guys agree with that.
Youngest son is named Brady, so how about that?
There you go.
He named his son after Tom Brady.
That's what I'm saying. So, but sports.
He's about your age.
Hey, that's awesome though, man. I love to meet him. Well, it's funny though, because a lot of people they ask me, they're like, "What's it like being so young in a business where everyone is?"
You say fantastic because you don't remember any real estate crash.
Well, I was young.
You're too young to have really.
I was 8 years old when the real estate market crashed.
Right.
And I remember because my dad was in real estate, and he kind of taught me what was going on. But the best thing that happened with the real estate crash is my dad was able to spend more time with me, and my mom too.
Yes.
But they would spend time with me and teach me these things.
Yeah.
But the best part about being young right now, and it first of all, it gets a lot of people's attention because they're like, who does this guy think he is, right? But I heard one of the greatest things. I'm not sure who said this, but they said it's not about the years that you've been doing something. It's about the experiences you've had in those years.
Correct. Yep.
So for me, and this is what I always tell young people, a lot of young guys get into sales, and they're like, "Man, these other guys have been doing it for 20 years. I've only been doing it for a couple years."
Yep.
The biggest thing is the experiences you've had in the short amount of time you've done it, because somebody could have been doing something for 20 years. But they've been doing the same thing for 20 years.
Yes.
They're not growing. They're not learning different things. So I have an always learning mindset where I'm always looking at what can I learn, what's something that I don't know, and how can I master it.
Yep.
So, and I think that would happen in any business. If you're in real estate, mortgage, whatever it is, always be learning, because you're going to learn something new every single day.
Yeah.
And
listen, I love the growth mindset, and I love you sharing that. Your dad would listen to Tony Robbins or other influential people, Zig Ziglar, and that's kind of where you develop the love for that. I've tried the very same thing with my kids. My girls are 11 and 15. And so in the car or around the house, I play stuff like that in the background all the time, because I know to some degree they're going to pick up on some things, right? And then the other thing, like I did this past summer with my oldest, I had her read a book. I had her read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, the teen version. And it comes with a workbook and do the stuff. And I paid her. Essentially, I had to pay her. I had to
bonus them.
I had to incentivize her to do it. But at the end of it, what she took away and what she learned and how it changed her mindset and all that stuff was totally worth it. Now I hope they develop that love for learning on their own. Because I'm like you, dude. I went to college, but I didn't finish. Everything that I've learned to this point has been because of me being intentional about wanting to grow and wanting to learn. And I just looked for, hey, what do I personally want to be better at, and develop a growth plan for how I'm going to accomplish that. So just like a lot of people have business plans for me, I obviously have a business plan, but I also have a growth plan I do every year where I determine, hey, here's the conferences I'm going to go to, here's the books I want to read, so on and so forth, so that I can hit those goals that I have for myself for personal growth. So I love hearing that.
Yeah, and you're getting their interest, right? Because not everyone's going to listen to their parents. I mean, I don't listen to everything my dad says, even though I should, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I started to see what my dad was doing, and then I found out about like Grant Cardone, right? And started following a lot of what he did, and ended up actually going to one of his events, and I got to be able to shake his hand and meet Grant, take a picture with him,
Cool.
And for me, I got interested. I've actually heard things that some of my mentors, that besides my dad, that my dad's told me a million times, right? But it sparks their interest, and then they want to keep growing because, they might not want to do the exact same thing. There's things that I definitely want to do bigger than my dad, and he loves that. He inspires me to do it. But he got my interest into it. So that's awesome, and I think that's for any parents out there listening.
Yeah.
That's what happens, and if you just plant those seeds, you never know what can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So listen, we brought Brad in to talk about building a brand, right? And so talk to us real quick, like what does that actually, like what does that mean to you? What's that? How would you define that?
So I would define that as not necessarily your company brand, even though you do want to build your company brand. You want to build your personal brand and who you are, right? So like for me, right, I build my brand on being this guy. I'm obsessed with winning. That's why I started my podcast called How to Win with Brad DeMint. And, really it's all about like, how can I, like when people see me, what do they think of you and how do you provide value to them, right? So my brand, like I started the podcast at a young age. I'm the young guy. I'm not always going to be the young guy, but I'm starting now so that people can see that like, okay, if you look, actually Tony Robbins started when he was 17.
Yep.
Now he's been around longer than everyone knows who Tony Robbins is.
He retires every 3 years. He's still
yeah, everyone knows Tony Robbins. So, but when it comes to building your brand, like it all is, who are you, right? You don't want to try to be other people. So, a lot of people compare me to like Tony Robbins, but I don't want to be Tony Robbins. I want to be Brad DeMint, right? So I think that's what your brand is who are you, right? You want to ask yourself that question and being yourself, right? Everyone is different, and you have to show people what makes you different. So, whether that be you want to post on social media, but you also have to show up, right? We could talk about the different things with the videos, but you guys see me on social media all the time. And that's one thing that I'll always make sure when you're meeting somebody, you want to get their social media. You want to make sure that you're following them and you're showing up on their news feed. But you also want to show up and meet people in person, right? Like how we met was in person. We were in Orlando at a,
Amen.
But then I connected with you guys both on social media, and now we're sitting here doing a podcast right now. So building a brand is being yourself and figuring out what makes you different, and then getting out there and showing people who you are so that people know and think of you and can do business with you.
Yeah, I love it because you're starting off with, hey, what's your value add, right? What do you want to, and you've got to figure that out being your authentic self too, right? Because people are going to see right through the unauthenticity of it. So, once you've kind of outlaid, hey, this is who I think I want to be, or this is who I know I want to be, and you've uncovered the, hey, why Bryan, why Brad, why John, like what's the next steps?
The next step is taking action, right? And, when you figure out like exactly what you want to do, doing it is key. And I know that sounds so simple, right? But it's so true, because like if I were to say I wanted to do something but I never did it, then it doesn't matter what I say. Your actions are definitely going to speak louder than your words, and those are all basic things. But that's the next step. Like so many people say they want to get on social media, but then they never post a thing on social media. They just sit there and nobody knows who they are. And so that's the next step with building your brand. I post on social media like 5 times a day. People know what I'm doing all the time. And I never tell people to just post about their business, right? Especially in our industry in real estate. Like you don't want to just post about your business all the time. Nobody wants to see that, right? People see
You'll
me.
get blocked.
Exactly. Nobody wants to see me. I actually rarely talk about title, but everybody knows that I do title, right?
Yeah.
I remind people every once in a while, but I'm being a real person, an authentic self, like you're saying. And I post that I'm at the Bucks game, right? I post all the things that I'm doing all the time, right? I went and played baseball the other day. You know, that was kind of a fun thing. Me and a couple of my buddies just to kind of go work out. We went out on a baseball field, and you know, I haven't played baseball since I was 13 years old, right? But you know, I hit a home run.
It's a baseball field all weekend long.
Yeah, he hit a home run on the T-ball field.
It was a little league field, so it's not. That's what I was about to say. Like, look, I hit a home run on a little league field, but
it's still a home run.
It's still a home run, right? Definitely put my confidence up there. I might go try out for the Rays tomorrow. No, but you know, that's the biggest thing though is be your authentic self and post what you like, because you're going to attract people that like what you like too, you know? So like for me, I connect with people that are in my industry. That's why I love what I do, because, you know, I have a sales job, but I don't at the same time right now. I'm a title guy, right?
Yeah.
My job is building relationships, but I figured out that if I post what I know in sales, because I study that stuff more than anybody. Like for me, for fun, I love to just read like Zig Ziglar and Bradley, Grant Cardone. Like I study what great people have done, and then I talk about it. But that attracts people that like that stuff, and then it actually helps people in their business. So like I focus on, and part of my brand, and people know that, is I'm talking about different sales tips that I use that can help mortgage people go out there and get more refis, that can help realtors go out there and get more listings. And that brings business to me.
Yep.
So I focus on that instead of just, you know, posting all about my business all the time. I focus on how can I help people and how can I show people how to be better in everything that they do.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think, you know, one of the things that we see, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in mortgage, whatever it is, we do see a disconnect between people's online presence and their offline presence. And I think that there's especially, and no offense, among your generation, there's a group that think that, hey, social, like I never have to leave my house. All I need is this cell phone, and I'm going to be able to earn a business and build a business and do really, really well. But at the end of the day, you've got to go out and shake hands, you know, and meet some people. And I think a lot of times, especially in today's social media world, that's where the disconnect is.
Well, and that's huge. And I love that you said that that's my generation, because it is my generation they think that you can do everything from TikTok, from Instagram. Yeah. Now, you have to be on those platforms, but I always say always be networking. And that means online and in person, right? Yeah. My friend Brad Lee says the more hands you shake, more money you make, right? And I'm always out there shaking hands. That's what I was doing when I met you guys. That's how I've met, like, you know, I've met some of these celebrities that people would say, they're like, how do you get in rooms with them, right? I show up. And see, most people, they don't show up. Yeah. And that's a huge thing. It's not even just the younger people, but a lot of people, you know, back in 2020, they were like, okay, now I can stay home. You know, I don't have to dress up nice and go show up to an event.
And I'll tell you, like, I think now the flip side, our generation, they don't want to be on social media. They want to go to the events and they want to network. Right. And so like there's a disconnect there, you know, where it's, hey, we want to be more networking, get in front of people, less social media. Whereas like the younger generation, it's more social media, less networking. You know, I think the lesson there is like there's got to be a medium between both of those.
There is.
You know, and
you have to do both.
And I think a lot of times that's where
I think you have to do both, but then you know, people fear, what am I going to post? You know, what are my friends and family going to think if I suddenly start, you know, posting 3, 4, 5 times a day? What the content's going to be? Are people going to block me? My friends are going to call me out on it. So for the older folks that didn't grow up with that comfort level, that's a hard push for some people. You know, they just flat out want to keep private, and we, as much as we respect that, we know that they're missing huge opportunity to be top of mind. I mean, that's all it's about.
And I'll tell you, one of the things we're talking about around here and talking about a lot is, you know, we recognize that, you know, especially like, so we're in the mortgage business that, you know, our business has had a really great run in 2020 and 2021. And a lot of it was market driven. You know, I wish I could say it was because, you know, we were very intentional. In a lot of cases we were. But we got into a good market. It's going to continue to be a good housing market for a long period of time. But the world has changed, right, post-COVID. And so what we're talking about is, if our business is going to be similar where it comes from to 2019 and 2022, what do we have to change about the way we're doing business to make sure we build those relationships and find ways to add value? All the things that you're talking about in terms of personal branding, right? And I think that's what we need to ask, because there's not as many events going on as there used to be. Not everybody is comfortable being out in public the way they used to be. Shoot, some of us have gotten so comfortable with, like, to your point, never leaving our home, you know, don't have to get dressed up for anything, don't have to take a shower, put on makeup, whatever it is, that we've gotten, I call it COVID comfortable. We've gotten COVID comfortable to a point in terms of, hey, the way you used to go out and do this is you were highly visible out in public, right? And now people primarily want to be highly visible on social media. And so I think as you're working on business plans, and this is the conversation we're having, as we're working on business plans for 2022, how do you answer those questions? You have to communicate differently now than you used to. You've got to find out ways to meet people different than you used to. And those are the things that we need to figure out. And the ones that do are going to be the ones that see huge success in the upcoming year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point on that, we've got plenty of people that are out and about again, but you go into a real estate office, 2019, you might have 25 people, 30 people to get in front of. You go into an office today and maybe have 3, 4, or 5. I mean, totally, everybody's comfortable working remote from home, and they're not finding it a need to come back into the office.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing that I would say, too, about that, right? You can post as much as you want on social media, but if you're not building a relationship with these people, you might not get their business, right? So that's where it comes into, like, yes, it's harder to walk into a real estate office and there's not going to be as many people there, right? But you got to figure out, how can I post on social media to get people in person and meet them and build relationships with them? Because you can post on social media all day long, but you might not know, what that person's favorite food is or what dog they have, or, you know what I mean? Something like that. And that's key when it comes to building relationships.
Yeah, you got to take, online to offline.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
And that's where I think a lot of people, that's what's missing. Right? When we talk about how can we solve this problem, that's how I am, right? I look at problems as opportunities, right? I look at the problem, I'm like, how can we solve this problem? And I think that's the way to solve it, is like, you have to figure out, how can you bring these people online? And you have to post, because if you don't, where are you going to find the people?
Look, if you're not posting, it's just nuts to me. I mean, I come from the school where somebody would come in and pitch you and tell you that for $5,000, they'd give you 3 billboards to put your information, billboards or park bench seats. There wasn't social media. Let's just put it that way, right? That was our social media. And it cost money, substantial money, an investment. And those folks that did do that, their business grew. Today, it's free at your fingertips to post about what you do for a living, whatever it is, and you can potentially do nothing but grow. Very, very seldom, unless you're posting, like we said, inappropriate, just controversial stuff, right? Your business should thrive and succeed if you put that effort forward for free.
Exactly. And then bring it into person. So I think, but you have to be providing value, though, right? I think that's another thing that comes to that, is like, a lot of people, they'll do something, like they'll do an event or something like that, and then nobody shows up. Well, it's because you have to provide value, and you have to figure out how to build relationships with these people. So also engaging with other people's posts. So that's another thing when it comes to, like, how do you get more people, is like, engage with their stuff, right? Because then you're going to be able to see what they like. And if people are doing social media right, you'll see things that you can relate to them, right? Like, I know we've had this conversation about you being a Bucks fan, but I've already saw that on your social media. I knew you're a Bucks fan. I am too. I know we have that in common, right? So that's what I think you have to do, is figure out how you can relate to these people and then build the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly I think the social media is a wealth of information about people. Like, so before you go take a meeting and sit down with somebody one-on-one, you can learn a lot about what you need to know through scrolling through their timeline. And, because I always say, like, we're always 1 degree of separation away from having some sort of something in common. You just got to find it.
Relationships are the new currency.
Yeah.
So you have to build relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, every platform, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you have to be posting. You have to have your stuff up to date, current. Most people will engage somebody in business and or a service based on a recommendation. They're going to pull that person up.
Yeah.
Hey, if I pull up Bryan and I see good stuff on LinkedIn, you know, you've got a nice, you know, a good page set up, I'm going to do business with you. If I don't see a picture of you, I'm probably moving on to somebody else. That's me personally. I want to know that the company's viable, that they're
Sure.
you know, they're relevant. And I think people make that mistake and they don't have their page set up correctly, and at bare minimum their LinkedIn you know, account, you know, fully updated with, you know, all their resume history.
Yeah.
And that's why you always got to be learning, you know, because if you're not always learning, you're not going to know. Like, if you don't have a profile picture, you know, like someone like you might not want to do business with them. And honestly, it's weird if somebody doesn't have a profile picture nowadays,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I'm like, how's that possible?
and some people, they don't want to learn, and it's sad, but you know what? It gives opportunity to the people that do want to learn. It gives opportunity to people that really want to go out there and take action and chase their dreams. So really, I think the best thing is even though there's people that aren't doing this, there's people that are listening to this right now, and they're not that person that's not doing it.
Sure.
They're doing it, and I think it just gives opportunity to people that are taking action. And the other people will learn later. Just like you said earlier, there are people that I grew up with that, you know, they're like, I can't believe Brad's doing this. But you know what? They realize they're not doing it, right? So I think that's a huge thing, is like, do it now, figure it out later, and just keep figuring out, keep learning, keep growing, and keep winning.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
Dude, Brad, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Is there anything like parting shots you want to give us as we kind of close out here?
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me on, and you know, keep doing this podcast. And if you guys want to follow me, my Instagram is Win with Brad. My podcast is How to Win with Brad DeMint, and I'd love to help you out any way that I can.
All right, cool, man. Thanks for coming on.
You were awesome, man.
Yeah.
21 years old.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy?
That's awesome.
Isn't it crazy?
I love
Hey,
it.
listen, one thing I will say real quick as we kind of close out, if you've made it this far, we just want to say thanks for continuing to watch our podcast, connecting with us on social media. We're on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of that stuff. Thank you so much for the opportunity to add value to you every single week. Thanks again to Brad and John. And if there's anything that you ever need, please remember, we're always here to serve.